And let me double check to make sure we are live.
Action.
Yep, we're ready to rock and roll. Take it away, Chauncey.
All right. Hello and welcome to the MCEC Fam Show. I am Chauncey Williams, the coordinator of student success here at MCEC, which stands for Muskegon Community Education Center, the place where the center of their child's education is magnified in a collaborating community. Our focus here at MCEC is community involvement, careers, social emotional learning, and nutrition. What's up, PK? What or who do we have on the agenda today, fam?
Well, I don't know what it is about the MCEC Fam Show, but we continue to have be able to get people on the show who are difference makers in our community. Today we have two amazing educators. One is Joe Lane, who comes to us a little northways, but is an amazing educator. And we have, of course, Mrs. Dolores Bray, Bray, who's an amazing in-house educator here at MCEC. So we're lucky, we're blessed, we're highly favored because we again are able to get people on the show who are doing so much for so many around this county. So let them introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll ask our 2020 questions. Miss Bray, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself to get started?
Oh, I guess. So yeah, I'm a teacher, been a teacher. So this is kind of my interesting story. I started teaching on 9/11. That was my first day in student training, student teacher training in a history class. Gee. Wow. So it's been an interesting career and definitely has been an alternative path in many ways. So I feel right at home at MCEC, and yeah, that's what I am. I have 3 grown kids and 3 grandkids, and yeah, it's been a good ride. And let's see, what'd you say? Who influenced me? Is that what you wanted to know?
You don't have to jump ahead yet. We'll
Okay.
get to the questions in a minute. We just want people to know a little bit about you, because although you're sometimes quiet, you do amazingly loud, wonderful things for kids. And so we want to make sure that people associated Dolores Bray with the one and the only and the infamous.
Okay.
I want to say Dean Joe Lane, Brother Joe Lane, Pastor Joe Lane. I'm just going to say friend Joe Lane. If you'll just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so those who know me well call me Little Joe, but obviously you didn't say that, so you're not in that number. Now, my name is Joe Lane. I'm actually originally from Lansing, Michigan. I moved here like 23 years ago, and I've been in education pretty much my whole life. I started when I was the drumline coach, captain head at my high school, but taught at Orchard View for a couple years, and then was in administration there. And about 12 years ago or so, maybe more than that, came to Reese Buffer, where I've served as an assistant principal and currently serve as the PBIS coach, co-coach with my homie and ride or die Brett Kavanaugh. And so we just do that work. And then I pastor a church in downtown Muskegon, New Life Christian Center, and we've been on that journey for about 18 years. And I am married to an amazing woman who's an educator. I work for Muskegon Public Schools. Yes, the one, the only, Shari Lane. And we have 3 children, 1 at home. And I'm a Spartan. I'm not a Spartan fan. I'm a Spartan. And so, yeah, I'm 2-3-1. I love Muskegon, and my journey here was kind of crazy, but it's been an awesome ride, and I'm glad to be on the show today.
Again, we appreciate both of you being willing to take time out of your day to join the MCEC fam, since both of you are really MCEC fam, no matter who tries to claim you otherwise. That's just kind of the way it is. So, Chauncey, you want to get us started with the questions? I know I always do that, right? I always ask when someone's taking a drink of water.
All right, yeah. So what I do here is career readiness, and I have this book. It's called The Team Parachute. And in the book, it has some questions, and then it's things you ask adults or you can ask students. And one of the questions is, how did you get in the field that you're currently working in? D or Joe? Pastor Joe.
Oh, I'll jump in on that one. So actually, it kind of started when my kids were in middle school. And I was working in insurance and in an office, and realized that the kids around my kids, about 1/3 of them in middle school, just sort of fell into this huge black hole. And they just seem to disappear. And the piece that I kind of identified was relationships, and I didn't know what to do about it. And then when my oldest daughter was getting ready to go to college, I said, I really think I want to go back to school and get my teaching. And this is kind of a funny story, because I was checking around and people wanted you to jump through umpteen zillion hoops. And my daughter was going to Hope College, and she said, Mom, you got to call Hope College. And so I checked it out, and lo and behold, Hope College gave me this amazing opportunity to go to Hope College and get my teaching credentials. And my daughter, believe it or not, took full advantage of that, because she knew where I parked. Freshmen couldn't have cars.
Okay.
So when I had class, she had a car to go to Meyer or wherever she went. She was a grown-up. And I'd have to look for my car when I came back and figure out where my car was, because I had a navy blue Honda Accord, and there was about 40 of them that parked down there. Yeah. So that was sort of how I got into teaching, and I had an amazing journey at Hope College. So just really appreciated that opportunity.
So then my thing is, you came from the insurance industry, right? Mathematics, and probably sitting at a desk in the office working with people, but not to this capacity. Here, it's like, that's a big transition.
Oh, so maybe I should go all the way back to MSU.
Okay.
I graduated from MSU with a foods degree, which is basically a chemistry degree, and then landed in Muskegon, and I didn't use that. Wound up in radio broadcasting for 7 years. I was at the home head office, and learned a lot about radio and a lot about corporate life. And so I wound up in insurance because I was working for a friend of the family who happened to have his office really close to school. And that made it real convenient. But
okay, so look, I just learned something about you. I didn't know you had the foods degree from the agriculture college.
Yeah. So
that's a CBE type of thing that we need at MCEC. So
yeah, see, that's that.
Oh.
So I have a chemistry certification, a social studies certification, and an English certification.
wow, yeah.
Which is helpful and not helpful.
In our space, it's helpful. We enjoy having you. You're a great asset to our students. So Joe, the question's on you now, Joe. So you're Pastor Joe to me. You do photography. You worked as an educator. So it's like you got this tidal wave of like careers and changes and transitions. And how did this happen? How did you get where you're at today?
Because I like to eat. Okay. And a man who doesn't work doesn't eat, bro. So listen, I got to have a hustle. Now, when I was like 12 years old, I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I hated school. So I wasn't sure how that was going to work. My trajectory was honestly to be a rock star. And I don't say that being funny. I'm a musician, and I've been a musician my whole life. And by the time I was 14, everybody in the community in Lansing knew that I was going to be a musician. That's what, when I went to high school, they were like, we just got to get him graduated so that he can go out into the world and be a musician. But my senior year, my high school choir teacher had went to some conference and met a guy, and he told her that their school was starting a jazz program. She goes, I know a kid who's looking for a college. He is a jazz drummer. My GPA was not college ready. I graduated high school with a 2.67 GPA after having all A's in the entire school year. So I was in a really bad place. My guidance counselor was like, you're not going to college, you're not college material. But at any rate, they sent off this audition tape. They heard the recording of me playing, accepted me into college, and I went away to Oberlin Conservatory. And I was going to be a performance major, but I always wanted to teach. But again, I hated school. So I had to try to figure out how that was going to work. And I guess I figured that I could tolerate school enough to go to it to get a degree to teach. And I never even really realized you had to go to school to be a teacher. Like I just, for some reason, didn't put that together in my young mind, but realized I had to. So ended up going to Oberlin, coming back to Michigan State where I graduated. But the reason that I teach and that I got into education was there were two people in my life, and one I'm going to name by name. And and you'll hear about him again, I'm sure. But it was my high school band teacher, who was the best educator I really ever had. But the other was my 10th grade algebra teacher. So that was Tom Jones, not the singer, but my band teacher. But the other was my algebra teacher, who I won't name just out of respect. He was the worst teacher I've ever had in my life. And I remember thinking, no kid should ever have this experience. And so I went into education because I wanted to be one person in the classroom that kids would never have to have him because they had me. And so that's really why I ended up going into education. Again, I hated school. I still kind of hate school, but I knew that in order for me to be in this space, I needed to do that. So that was kind of the journey that got me there. And it's just something that I'm passionate. I love kids, and I was passionate about that. So I don't know, it just kind of fell into place because it wasn't what I was really pushing myself to do. But it ended up working out.
We call that happenstance.
Yeah.
But then the pastor part. So it's like you went.
Bro, never in my ever imagination. When I met Shari, I said, hey, you don't have to worry. Because I was a church musician, but I was only a church musician because our band was sweet. It wasn't because I was like in the church. We just had a killer band at our church in Lansing. And so I could come to church every Sunday and just wreck it. And so I had no like aspirations of being in church like that. But I said to her, I said, hey, you don't never have to worry about me preaching, because that's we've disqualified ourselves from that because of life choices. Started preaching, and then again said I'd never pastor. And that story is a lot longer, but it was just a path that God had me on, and was like, this is what you're called to do. Again, I did have a bad experience in church, and I wanted to make sure that the people that I pastored experience in church was something that was safe and real and authentic, and move them to a better relationship with God.
Okay, yeah, that's a solid one. I appreciate like that. Before we came on the Zoom, you shared some pathways that we have in common, like you said, the Michigan State.
Yeah. So Chauncey, one question for you and D, since you both know this, I got to see how well my education has been working. So this is an assessment. I have only had one request from God as a pastor for the people that I pastor. What is it?
Man.
D, I know you can answer, so go ahead.
No, I'm going to wait for Chauncey.
I mean,
He's been gone for a long time, though. I have to give him that. I had one prayer as a pastor about the people that I pastor.
I mean, I know our church is diverse. We're diverse, so we got diversity.
You don't want to pastor dumb people.
That's it.
Oh yeah,
That's
about 9 people from our church that graduated from Cornerstone. So yeah,
we have the most seminary graduates of any school from Cornerstone's cohort program. But I just don't want to pastor dumb Christians. I don't want us to be a group of people who just settle and relax and just and I don't want to pastor dumb. I don't want to teach dumb students. I want people who are hungry to go get what they need to get so that they can be better. The biggest pet peeve I have with my own children at home is when they settle. I lose my mind. I lose my appetite.
Yeah, you always said that when in sermons, like you should. I'm teaching you, but you should be able to go study for yourself. Here's the scripture. You can ask me questions about it. We can build on it. So yeah, you're right. You're right.
There's some interesting parallels, because D saw a need, stepped up and stepped in. Joe sees a need, steps up and steps in. It's fascinating when we get to meet and teachers, great educators talk about themselves, because it's see a need, fill a need. And it's usually not find someone to take care of it. It's they step into that place themselves. That's some pretty powerful stuff. And I like the fact that Joe, you didn't make quote unquote the requirements, but you pushed through those requirements and saw your purpose and pursued it anyway. And the flip side is D, you're like, I'm tired of these offices. I'm going to go and teach a whole bunch of adolescents. I mean, who does that? Who does that? Right. But that.
So here's the crazy part is over 20 years ago, I said, I don't want to sit in an office with a telephone and a computer screen in front of me all day. What am I doing right now?
You're doing that now. You're right.
But But the thing is that strikes me is I'm like a third generation public school teacher. My mom was a public school teacher. My great grandmother was a public school teacher at Phillips back when it was a county school. And I grew up believing that what's best about us as a community lives in the public square. And one of the great determiners of the public square is public school. The public school is the creator of the public square. And so when we meet educators who do these things, who step in, that just goes to show me that our public square has to be worked on. It's not a static thing, it's not fixed in time. It's something that we have. So that kind of leads me to the next question, which would be, and we'll go, I think we had Dee go first last time. So this one's for you, Joe, Pastor Joe, Brother Joe, Friend Joe. It is, who is that person who impressed upon you something or some belief where it turned you in a direction that would have maybe have gone differently had that person not been a part of your life?
Yeah, that question's easy. It's Tom Jones. It's my high school band director. That dude, because you talked about your being a generational educator. I was not a generational educator. My dad has an 8th grade education from Mississippi. My mom did graduate from high school, but I remember my parents doing the best they could for me educationally, but they didn't know that world and they didn't know that space. So I would come home with failing grades and they would say, I'm sure you can do better next time. That's all that they knew to say. I don't fault them for that. They just didn't know that world. And I knew the world of music. My dad's a singer and all I wanted to do was play music. And so when I was failing all those classes, I remember Tom walking up to me and saying, I heard you're failing all your classes. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And he looked me dead in the eye and he said, if you fail another class, you'll never play for me again. And at this point, I was taking 7 classes throughout the day, but 3 of them were music classes. And I'm not saying this boastfully, but I was the best musician in the school. There's no question. By sophomore year, I was his best drummer. And our school's claim to fame was our jazz band. So the drummer was pretty important. But I knew every fiber in his being that he would let that band fall apart to prove his point to me that I didn't mean that much and that I didn't matter. And he checked me, and he checked me hard. And that day, standing next to my locker, he walked up to me and he fronted me. And that day, I went from failing all of my core classes to getting 5 A's and a B. So I only had 6 classes, I guess, at that time. And the B was actually in his theory class, in his class. But I failed. I did not fail another class because if I got too close, I know he'd do it. And I talk to him regularly now. I'm his oldest child's godfather. He was in my wedding. He is one of my best friends, but he was my high school band teacher. And when people say that educators don't matter, it's crazy. That man really saved my life. And I didn't cry and I talked about him. That's pretty impressive.
Well, you hit the point. Is he persisted into your life and he stayed there and wouldn't let you up. And he believed in you enough to say to you, either you get it together, you're out. And you believed him enough to know that he would follow through.
Yeah. So there's a phrase that I read this summer called high help. And the phrase high help means that you hold a person to the highest expectation that they can because of their potential, but you also help them to get to that. A lot of times with students, we say, we know you can do it, but we don't give them everything that they need to do it. And so they fail anyway because they don't have the resources. The thing that Tom did for me is he was like, he jacked me up. I can't tell you how hard he was on me. My senior year, he made me cry in front of 120 band students. And I'm a senior and I'm popular and I got all this stuff. And he just jacked me up because I missed an entrance in one song. And we had it out that day. I went to his office. I was like, I'm sick and tired of you treating me like this. And I went off on him. And I was like, why do you treat me like this? And he said, because you're worth it. And how do you argue that? He had given me all of the musical stuff to make me successful. So he had given me high help. And when a person gives you high help, you can't do anything about that but respond or quit and take ownership for quitting.
That's a huge testament to him. And clearly it had an effect on you because my guess is you fronted people up and jacked people up the same way. In fact, I think I've heard a few quoted speeches from Joe Lane's infamous mini sermonettes to kids. I won't disclose sources or put text up, but I'm just here to say.
Oh, I'm not interested to hear about that though.
How about you, Dee? Who's that person that jumped in and persisted in your life? Who was that person who, if that person hadn't been there, things may have gone differently?
That's a tough one, but I guess I got to land on my dad. Because I was thinking about it and I'm like, okay. But so I was a daddy's girl, so I got to do whatever daddy was doing. And I was kind of his daddy's little helper. So whatever he was fixing stuff, I got to fix stuff, or I got to watch him. A lot of times he didn't always let me put my hands on stuff, but I got to watch. And so I became a really good watcher, and just learning from experience. And I remember, as long as I can remember, of him saying that you can do or be anything you want to be if you work for it. And he was saying just opportunity is limited not by who you are, but by your ability to get the job done. He said, if you can get the job done, people are going to, accept you. So it was always one of those things where I just really felt like he was always the encouragement. He was always the go-to guy. If something needed fixed, he knew how to fix it, and kind of pass that passion on to me. And but he was also like a big picture thinker. So he wasn't just, he worked with his hands a lot, but he also, this is kind of the incredible thing, he was the person who wrote all of the service literature for appliances for Kelvinator. He did washers, dryers, and dishwashers. And I know I never heard this from him, but I heard it from other people, that anybody could fix, if you had a washer, dryer, dishwasher, and Bob Cowan wrote the manual for it, you could fix it. Now, some of the other people, you'll be fine until you get to XYZ problem, and then the manual doesn't quite go all the way. And so I would hear those kinds of things. And so I remember him with yellow pads and pens, so writing. So I picked up writing early, and he was also a reader, but so all the kinds of things that I've figured out to do to be successful kind of do go back to my dad. So.
Paul, can I just say one more thing about Tom in general, all of my educators? I think the other thing is I grew up in a really diverse neighborhood and community in the early 70s. I mean, it was very, very diverse. And one of the things about me becoming an educator was, from probably third grade on, I had educators who looked like me. And so I was able to realize that there were people who did what I did, and I could connect. I mean, Tom is an African-American male who, he and I are just similar. And because he took me under his wing when I was 14, I mean, I really felt a sense of efficacy because I was connected to, I mean, whether it's Miss CJ or Miss Worsey Taylor or Miss Bent or Miss Jones, or, I mean, I can name all of these teachers who in some way I had a personal connection with, not just about the content of our class, but really who looked like me. I mean, my high school principal was an African-American male. So really having people who I associated with on a personal level, that really, really did impact the fact that I thought that I could do it because I already seen somebody who was doing it.
Now, it's interesting, and Dee or Joe, you'll have to correct me in my pronunciation, and probably my interpretation and understanding, but there's this theologian named Frederick, I think Buechner. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'm thinking it's auf Deutsch. It's Buechner. Long story short, he talked about stories and the power of stories. And what's fascinating to me, listening to you guys, is I can almost imagine what your dad must have been like. Because I'm in full disclosure here, I have any issue with technology where I don't know how to do something, the first thing I'm doing, I'm calling Bray. I'm like, Dee, How do I, and D's not one, she'll let me go on the phone for about 10 seconds. Then she's like, okay, I'll just be over. And she'll come over and she'll teach me how to do it. She doesn't push me out of the way and say, let me fix that like my daughters do. She actually teaches me. Her work ethic is unbelievable. I mean, she's here before I am. She's here after, after I leave. So that's really cool. But the interesting thing is, D, I feel like you really have gone that next step in your story and inviting people into your learning space and showing them, and not just having them watch. That's a huge step, because that's a hard step too. And for you, Joe, when I hear you talk about Tom, and then what you said about him being someone you could look at as being an exemplar, that's what kids need. Kids need to find their exemplars. They need to find the many iterations and variations of who they could be, of their possible selves, as Tom would say. Those things are brilliant. Now, we had Gemini the poet on very early when we started this MCEC Fam Show, and she didn't know that she was going to be interviewed live on Facebook, but she just brought it. And so we were all in awe. But the one word she kept bringing up was being consistent. So I guess the next topic we want to kind of touch on a little bit is, how do we show our kids, because our kids are in a strange state right now with all of the things happening over social media, with the changes in the way in which they receive their education. How do we become like your dad, D, or like Tom, Joe, how do we become that consistent presence for kids, given all of these strange circumstances and the fact that teenagers are a little strange sometimes? So how do we as adults become or remain consistent for our kids?
I think one piece is, rather than using the word consistent, using the word predictable. So do my students, do my coworkers, do the people at New Life, can they predict? And I know I'm a pretty unpredictable guy in some ways, but we joke about that all the time. Dee sang in our praise team for years, and they always talk about how I just go off the beaten trail and do all these things. But Dee and I have had conversations about that, and we're like, I really don't. I mean, for as much as I'm unpredictable, I am very predictable. And so the consistency of it is that the kids know when I show up at a football game, they know what I'm shooting. They know what I'm gonna see. I'm predictable. And I think that what we provide for them is the consistency, is predictability, that I don't have to get shaken when Joe's here, because I know that this is what's going to happen. And I think that that's what's valuable.
How about you, Dee?
Well, I just was thinking basically two things, is relationship and encouragement. Because if we can be consistent in relationship and know that, hey, we're going to be there, predictable. And I've had kids give me grief because, when are you ever going to be absent? It's like, yeah, but the only way to be, to keep that relationship consistent is to actually be there. You have to kind of be there, and then always to just encourage them and just to see what it is that they have done to this point, even if it's kind of crappy, but find the good thing in it. Find where you can build on, where you can go for the next thing. And I just think about yesterday, and I just had yesterday afternoon, I worked with a student who just didn't know how to write this essay. And I started asking him questions, and he was giving me answers, and I actually got on where he could see, and I was typing what he told me, just the same exact words. I didn't edit the words at all, just typed what he told me, and then had him look at it, and he started to read it back. He's like, oh, yeah, okay, I can do this. And then he started giving me some other ideas, and so just kind of kept going from there. But just kids just need encouragement, because for whatever reason, I feel like they're so discouraged right now, in so many ways. And if they can just get a little bit of encouragement, maybe they can do just a little bit more.
So be predictable, be consistent, meaning show up, and be that sort of assertive encourager. I mean, to be there when Others may or may not be offering those words of encouragement. All right, Chauncey, Brent, and Tom, I apologize. I've done what I say I won't do, which is monopolize the questions. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you guys to be able to ask our illustrious guests a question or two. Otherwise, I got more.
I met Joe when I was a very young pup in the game, when I was coaching the Muskegon Thunder, and he was our team chaplain. And I went through a very difficult time where my best friend died, and I came to Joe and I said, I need your help. And he got me through it. And I know what he's talking about when he talks about being predictable, because I knew what I was going to get when I went to him. And I've seen Joe numerous times, obviously, since then. And Joe Lane is the same person every time I see him. And that is important when you work with children. They know what to expect of you every day. And working with Dolores, it's the same thing. She's a wonderful educator. And I know the Bray I'm getting every day. And that's what makes the two of you special. I really don't have a question, but I felt like that needed to be said.
I got one. It's gonna lead into interests and hobbies. What are your interests and hobbies? I've been seeing some things on Facebook from Joe, and Pimpleton said Joe is the bishop of beef.
Listen. As soon as you said Pimpleton, I knew exactly where that was going, man. Don't even get that dude started. So my interests and hobbies are photography, hanging out with my wife. I really want to say reading, because it sounds like I'm supposed to like be smart and say that. I hate reading, but it's been an interest because I've had to do it in order to survive. So lately it's been smoking meat, and I got a new grill for Christmas, and yeah. Praise God for that.
I saw you with what's the thing you had? I call it the stick, the fire stick, the real.
Oh, the smoke tube. Yeah, I did almost set my house on fire the other day though, but yeah, no, it's been, my interest is also people though. Like I'm fascinated by human behavior. Like it just intrigues me.
That's where the photography comes from.
For sure, man. It is so cool. Like every moment that I get behind the camera is different. Every football team that I shoot, every soccer, it's all different. But smoking meat is different too. So, T-bone is different than a prime rib. I just want to say that.
Okay. Yeah. What about you, D? What you got interest in hobbies?
That's tough because I'm interested in a lot of things. I do a lot of reading. Actually try to stay off of Facebook and social media and actually get into some deeper things. I'm reading some books, but I'm not one of these people that sits down and reads a whole book and then puts it aside. I've got about 8 books going right now, which is crazy. But the funny part of it is as I'm reading different things, they kind of mesh together, and I start to find out that where one lets off, another one picks up, and kind of fills in the gaps and ideas and whatnot. But I love to be outside too. I like to walk on the beach, walk in the woods, on the hills, the dunes out by Lake Michigan. Some of my favorite places to be. So just those are kind of my mainstays.
Well, I'm tempted at this point to say just like your daddy, because you just said one of his traits, which is looking at that big picture and looking for the patterns and the things that exist underneath that big picture. I do have to make a confession to say that I promised not to say one word about Joe's pulled pork. And I still won't say anything about Joe's pulled pork.
You did not taste it. It was done.
Hey, Brent, brother Joe had some pulled pork jerky. So sorry. Okay, so back to the program. Do we have what other questions might we have for our guests? Okay, well, this is the last question, and it's important. It's kind of like it's like the going piece. What are some words that you believe are important to offer to the people who may or may not, who may just jump in and watch this show? What are some words they need to hear? Just in general. I'm not setting this up. I'm just saying, what are some words that folks need to hear these days? Dee, you want to go first? Or you want me to have Joe go first?
You can have Joe go first.
All right, Joe.
You can't apologize for anything you didn't go for. I don't believe that I'm going to get everything that I go after. I just don't think life has afforded that for me, but I'm sure not going to get anything that I don't go after. And so you can't complain and whine. I mean, I tell students all the time, you want to have a pity party, let's go tit for tat, story for story. We can talk about our childhoods and we can go on, and whoever has most stories wins. And you're going to lose. My childhood sucked for a lot of parts of it. So get over yourself with that. The only people who are responsible to feel bad for you are your mom and daddy, and sometimes they don't even do that. So don't let that be your hindrance. I mean, you gotta grind, and however bad you want it, that's how bad you're gonna go after it. When people see that, then they'll start to respond to you because they see how bad you want it too. So my thing is, if you're hungry, go eat. And that's really, I guess, that's been my life's mission is like, I wasn't set up to be a school administrator. I definitely wasn't set up to be a pastor. But because I knew that those were things I was supposed to do, I found ways to make it happen. And there's always ways. So go get it.
Okay. Well, I would say probably the first thing is don't give up on hope. I mean, hang on to hope. There's always hope. There's always a way. That's something I heard when I was growing up. And when there's a will, there's a way. You figure it out. If it doesn't work the first way, there's a workaround. There's always a plan B. And I guess that kind of learned that from my dad too, because he was the fix it guy. If something broke, you could fix it. And if you couldn't fix it the regular way, he could figure out a way to fix it. And it's just like, so you just hang on to hope. And the other one is just stay flexible, because I got to tell you, the only constant in my life has been constant change. Everything changes. You get used to something, and as soon as you get used to it, it's going to change. And so instead of pushing back on it, you just have to kind of say, yep, well, all right, things changed. Now what? Where do we go from here? And just kind of keep looking forward. The past definitely has some lessons in it, but the challenge is when people let the past become an anchor. And I really kind of say, just keep looking forward.
Okay. Are there any questions that we haven't asked, something you feel compelled to speak on? Or otherwise, I know that you guys both have full-time jobs, and we're going to transition to our food segment and our closing segment. But if there's any question we didn't ask, or any words you wanted to impart, now would be a time, if that's something you'd like to do.
I just really would like to take the opportunity to thank you folks for allowing me to be a part of this. I know sometimes I get beat up for living on the other side of the causeway, and I just want you to know how grateful I am. And I've been working on getting a bridge from Heritage Landing to Custer Park. I did you know that.
Well, just because you don't live on the street doesn't mean you ain't part of the neighborhood. You know what I mean? And
I'm 231, baby. You are absolutely right. The church is actually my real crib. So, I mean, there we go, waiting for us. Let's go.
Well, and quite simply, if not just for the fact that you're married to SJ, I mean, that.
Oh, man, come on. Hey, real talk though, be careful because she's from the Heights.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, look, you could always throw. They give you rap about being you. Throw a Brother Barnes, and that's a pass.
How do you do, sir?
That's a VIP pass, Brother Barnes.
Are there any parting words or thoughts you'd like to share, Dee? Or
I know that Joe for sure, and Dee probably hasn't been privy to our conversations that we've had in the past couple of days, but it's just interesting to me how that theme of spiraling just comes out. And as we engage with more and more educators who we respect and know are doing good work, that theme of life as a spiral instead of as a straight line just keeps coming out, and that you persist and you try to find a way and you just keep moving forward. And I just blown away I can't say I'm blown away. It's just I'm pleasantly surprised every time that theme comes back out, and I really appreciate it.
Yep. Yeah, you just got to kind of try to keep going up instead of down. But if you go down, you still keep trying to go up. That's for sure. So,
All
yeah.
right, well, Joe and Dee, you're welcome to stay because like I said, you're part of the neighborhood. But otherwise, we're going to segue into Flavortown, USA with Brent. All right, Brent, it's all you.
All right. First of all, Happy New Year. We made it 5 days into 2021, and then the world revealed the bonus tracks. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay. So we got, because I'm kind of in a bad place so that I don't want to go off on a tangent. So the coming up in the food world is the national championship game. Now, I'm not sure if it's gotten delayed yet or not, but the one thing that holds true is the ceremoniously of breaking bread. And it's very often that you break bread. Regrettably, I don't have any food today, and let me explain why. My eatery that I chose for the week, they're not open, and so I can't go get those delicious whammos from Bob High. I don't know if you've ever had them. They're like these Cajun spiced chicken wings that come in a brown paper bag. It's owned by the Ernvalls, Carrie Ernvall. She doesn't own it; it's her family, and she's on our athletic board. But anyway, they come in this like brown paper bag full of spicy goodness that it's something to live for. They're on Getty Street. You should check them out. They're only open from 3 to 7 right now because you can only do carry out. But it is something to write home about. I wanted to do a chicken wing because the national championship game's coming up, and it makes perfect sense. So in lieu of my chickeny goodness, I'm going to share with you some facts. Did you know that well, hold on, I got the wrong thing up here. There will be on average 1.3 billion chicken wings consumed on Monday. Okay, providing that it happens. How many avocados do you think it takes to make all that guacamole? 139 million avocados to make your favorite dip, and about 300 million gallons of refreshments. And so in a time that loving thy neighbor is ever more important, break bread, enjoy one another, enjoy the game. Let's love each other from a distance right now. Hopefully in the near future, that won't be a thing anymore. I'm exhausted with it, and I know you are too. But be kind to one another. Love each other for each other's differences. Sports are the best way, or a good way, I should say. Food is the best way to find some common ground and get back to hugging each other virtually for a moment, and just being good people. Okay, if you're looking for something to do this Saturday, we're going to kick off 2021 the right way. We're going to play a high school football game and a regional championship game against East Grand Rapids. And so there's a lot of things going on right now to be excited about. And so that's that. Get you some chicken wings, enjoy the game. Hopefully it happens on Monday, but if not, we'll enjoy it whenever that thing comes around.
I was to ask you a question. How many times you guys face East Grand Rapids in the last decade?
Seven since 2014.
Wow.
I believe we've played them twice a year for a couple years, and then we'll play them this year. This is the second year in a row we've played them in the playoffs.
That's 7 victories in a row.
I don't want to jinx myself, but yeah, we played pretty well against them in the past. They're good. They got a lot going for them. They got a couple studs, and who knows? I mean, not to transition to the sports talk section, but we've all been off for 8 weeks, and it's a long time to be away, and with very little prep time leading in. And so, you know, we're focused on not making any mistakes and thinking about the chicken wings to come.
That's right. Yeah, we were getting chicken wings and pizza to watch that game on the stream.
Two things brought to mind. One is, I don't know, and Joe, I'm looking at you. It's like, did you know about this Bob High wing plug? Because I didn't know anything about Bob High lanes and these Whammo wings. And I'm a little disappointed in you, Brent. I thought we were better than you.
I'm with you on that, because when he was talking about this, I'm like, what is this and what have I not heard about? And that's cool. I'll just go back to my little pulled pork that you don't get any of, PK. None. Not an ounce, not a bite.
Listen, you just got to ask the right questions, man. I turned you on to the pizza and sub shop. You got me eating a bologna sandwich. Now let's head down Getty and eat some of the best Cajun wings around.
Make sure you say fried bologna sandwich, because I know what you're talking about, and you can't just say bologna sandwich, because there's a lot of people out here angry thinking that there's something special and you didn't.
Well, there are two additional things now. See, you guys need to stop doing this. First, Brent, I'll be thinking of you, and I'm going to do a gratuitous plug. I'll be thinking about you on Saturday when I'm in Kyrgyz Stadium in the executive box with a beautiful fatty lumpkins sandwich. And I will be happy to consume the whole thing in honor of the Big Red Football enterprise. The second thing is, Joe, I've seen what you've been cooking, and it's pretty amazing. But there's that pound cake from SJ takes the cake. The pound cake from SJ takes the cake.
Hey, listen, I'm not even arguing with you. I got a plug on that you don't get. She just made like 4 cakes the other day, just so you know. Look at his face, everybody. Look at his face.
You know what? Joe Lane's going to get put in the waiting room.
We got to buy one for the show. We got to buy one of those cakes for the show. We got to have one of those.
Y'all ain't got to buy one. I'm gonna hook y'all up because I care. We're going to get one on there live.
All right. And it's a good thing we'll be on Zoom, because, you know, if you eat SJ's pound cake, everybody's got to duck, because people are just going to be swinging after that first bite. Because that's amazing. Tom, what's the social emotional learning for today?
So I've been thinking a lot about just our conversations as a team, and then in the transition to hearing from students and where they are and what they're experiencing. And the law of attraction just sticks out at me continually, that whatever you're focusing on is what you're going to find. And that if you're sitting there and you're looking at everything that's going on and you're focusing on the negatives, then sure enough, you're going to find plenty more negatives. But if you can twist that and you can surround yourself with people who are looking for the positives and looking for things that we can gain through this experience instead of focusing on what we're losing, then you're going to see more and more and more of those. And so as the adult that's interacting with students and kids and even other adults, you know, making that conscious choice to be positive and to not fall into that easy pit trap of, yeah, things stink and they're just getting worse. And did you hear about this and that and this and that? And you just, you know, you spiral downwards then. But if you can make that choice to start looking just for a couple positives and not making tough situations, not making light of them, you know, things are tough. It is very hard to do school online. It's hard to stay motivated. It's hard to stay engaged. Yep. But our students that are learning virtually and having to balance being in school a couple days a week and being out of school a couple days a week, all those different situations, they're learning skills that other people pay a lot of money to go to college and learn it in a very expensive way. And they're gaining that skill now. They don't know they're gaining it. They don't necessarily want to gain it, but that is a huge positive that a lot of our students are figuring out now, and it's going to serve them well for the rest of their lives. So I'm making that conscious choice to focus on positives, and the more positives you decide are there, the more you're going to find. And just using that as a tool to keep ourselves motivated and engaged as we're moving forward.
I think you hit something. You hit a nail on the head for me, at least, Tom, because I was feeling kind of angry last night. And luckily, my wife stops me from acting and behaving in ways that I would later maybe regret. I don't think I would regret them, but that's part of the problem. Is when I act out in anger, I need to regret them because that's not who I want to be. And so when we talked this morning, I had to go and I brought in something for my little segment for show and tell. And so what you're going to see here, for those of you who remember, these are called bubbler lights. And back in the day, you could take a bubbler light and put it in your Christmas tree socket because they had little sockets and it would bubble. Well, my aunt and uncle had these on their Christmas tree. And I remember being just amazed by them because our Christmas tree lights were, I don't know, I think they're what we got at Meyer, but these babies would bubble and light up and go all kinds. It was just amazing. Well, not so long ago, both my uncle and aunt passed from COVID-related issues just several days apart. And so I got to thinking about my anger and what is this all about? Because I wasn't very surprised about people's behavior, but I was so angry about it. And I got to thinking, I'm angry about it because at some level, I'm holding people who behave badly accountable for a virus that took my aunt and uncle's lives. And I needed to come clean. And so I brought this to school today. For show and tell, because I'm going to put this on my shelf, because this reminds me of their legacy in my life that was every Christmas. They always got me the dopest gift. It was a Rubik's Cube or a snake or all those, or the pyramid. And they're always the aunt and uncle who looked out for us and were interested in our lives. And so these little lights, and thankfully my cousins, Debbie and Jamie, gave these to me because, you know, I always talk about these bubblers because they're just something. So I want to put out there that when I'm feeling angry, I sometimes need to take some time to figure out and dig into that anger a little bit and excavate the feeling to figure out what am I really angry about and acknowledge the hurt. I'm hurt that my uncle and aunt passed. I'm hurt that I couldn't say goodbye to them. But at the same time, I need to figure out how I don't take that hurt and misdirect it into hurting other people. I won't say hurt people because I hate that expression, but it's true. So that's my show and tell for the day. So Chauncey, it's up to you to somehow bring all of these interesting threads into a weave to make a rope to pull us on out of here.
All right. Well, that's the end of our live hour. Thanks for tuning in to the MCEC Fam Show, the place where the center of your child's education is magnified in a collaborating community.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey, guys.
Salam.